Oh my gosh. Welcome to our webinar. This is creating GovCon, government contracting community. And I'm gonna just dive right into it. A little bit of background, the origin story to what Randy and I are doing here. I joined Randy's school, Government Contracting Academy, about 3 years ago. And part of this school is that we meet every week, the cohort, everybody else that's in the school, we meet every week and we discuss the issues that we're going through, the opportunities that we're facing. We partner up, primes and subs, and yeah, we bring Randy our problems, and he guides us. Uh, I picture it like Yoda and Luke. Randy's my Yoda, and I'm his Luke. Uh,
Well, okay.
well,
Now to be sure, there, Jonathan, I never created a group or never belonged to any group where I'm the smartest person. If I if I am the smartest person in the room, which I'm definitely not with this group, because we have some really truly remarkable people that show up every single week, and I am not. So I think Jonathan has been a little bit too generous here. It is a collaborative effort. We always have an expert in something that shows that shows up at these things and really guides the rest of us. So I learn as much as I teach in that thing. That, just to be fair, I've learned so much from you, Jonathan. It's shocking. It really is. And so I would consider it a collaboration. Even though I'll admit that I go a little deep, in government contracting, maybe deeper than others, but man, it is a collaboration. That's what works because it's a true community. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was
oh my
starting to
gosh.
blush over. I was starting to blush. So I, because half of that was, I like I said, I learned just as much as I share.
Well, you just summarized that. That is going to be the essence. This is a webinar series. I did not promote that in my original promotion of this. We are going to do this every 2 weeks going forward. Randy and I, we've been doing it every week going forward. I'm going to leave that scheduling open a little bit, but right now I'm calling it today. We'll do this every 2 weeks going forward. And to Randy's point, this is kind of like a symbiotic communication or relationship, however you'd want to say it. Randy has the knowledge, and I'm able to ask questions. The other team members are able to ask questions. There are different people, different perspectives, different backgrounds, different issues. Asking Randy's questions. So essentially, each question from each, I'm going a little deep here, but like the individual perspectives, we all might be asking the same question, but we're all going to ask it different ways. And that, for me, for myself, has proven super beneficial. Sometimes I don't know how to articulate the question I have, right? And our team, the group, has been super beneficial on that. This meeting, this webinar going forward is kind of the summation, the foam at the top of that deep glass of knowledge. Oh my gosh, I like that. That was a good metaphor. Uh, yeah, I've been asking Randy to do this for a while, or suggesting that we do this for a while. This is something that we pay for. The members of the group. This is pay a lot for. This is high dollar kind of information, and what we're doing now is public, right? Would you? We were
Yeah,
talking
I
about
would
this.
totally agree. Yeah. Well, the reason why with the government contracting academy, just okay, we'll just be full kimono right up from the front.
Sir.
I do charge a fee for government contracting academy, and there's several reasons why. One is I operate a learning management system where I have 25 courses and growing on a daily basis, and that's nearly 200 lessons. And in order to be able to provide what I would like to think of as an executive MBA caliber training and education, it costs money to do that. And by charging, just a few $1,000s compared to what an executive MBA type of education costs, it enables me to really provide what I would consider to be like full spectrum, training and support, thousands of documents, and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I charge. I volunteer my time. A little bit about me, and I'll tell you why I do this right here. I just stole your next question, so
I like it. I like it.
I
Keep
just
going. Keep
jumped.
going.
I just
Just,
jumped the game. So the deal is a little bit about me, and I want to share my screen for this because I think I'm more of a visual learner, and I think for people who are like me, I think it really helps to see that. I'm not going to go on presenter mode because I want this, Jonathan and I, we talk about this, quite at length. We want this to be a community. We want this to be knowledge based, so it's not going to look all polished and things like that, because it's more important to have the honesty and the transparency and just the information, the rawness of it, because I think that's a lot more effective than just
Yes, sir.
having something that's really polished. But so this right here is me, right? And this is my credibility slide, and my credibility slides goes into a few things that I want to talk about. I've been in the federal government contracting industry since late 2000, and I been doing this for almost a quarter of a century. I've won about $2 billion worth of federal government contracts. Won about 350 to 400 million for my own companies. My companies have been featured in Inc. 500 fastest growing companies list, and also the Fast 50 Washington Technology Fast 50 list on multiple occasions. I've had multiple successful exits. These companies right here are my babies. One way or the other, I either launched and led them, or I co-launched and co-led them, or co-owned or something. Each one of these things, and they were all successful, leading to multiple 6-7 digit exits from industry. And I copied a few of these headlines here just to show you just because you're a small business doesn't mean that your rewards are small, that the contracts are small. These are all small business awards: 96.5 million, 50 million, 30 million, 79 million. Those are just the ones that, for whatever reason, Washington Technology decide to keep up on their website. Because I just did this a couple years ago. Went looking for some screenshots. My largest was 115 million as a small business. Now, the largest I'm aware of is between 200 and 250 million, nearly $250 million. That's with a B, and that's a small business set aside. And my chief operations officer won that when he was the president of a company, a small business. And so the numbers are just absolutely phenomenal. So what I did is I struggled a lot. And I'll talk about why that is here in a bit, but I struggled a lot launching my first company, and it took me years to learn this stuff because there was no training provider out there. There was no MBA program that focused on the world's largest customer. That is shocking, but it's so true. I just assumed that I'd just go get an MBA that focused on government contracting, and they don't exist. There is training out there, but training is geared towards those multi-billion-dollar companies. That's really not effective for a small business, and it's cost prohibitive. That's where you're paying tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for training support, and that's usually for a single bid effort, not that concrete foundational level knowledge that you need for strategy and so on. So, but this right here, I call this my credibility slide because this is what everybody thinks, when they think about credibility. Oh, wow, that's what they want to see. This is my real credibility. I am a total failure. I have stepped on every landmine known to mankind launching my small businesses. I know where they are. It took me literally 8 years to get any type of significant traction in this industry. Why? Because I was running around in circles because I thought I had missed a mine that I needed to step on. That's how many mistakes I made. So I learned from the school of hard knocks. I kept on making mistakes until I realized, hey, don't step on that again. That goes boom. So, but here's the great thing though, and this is what I tell everybody there, Jonathan. This is the best thing about entrepreneurship. It's not like baseball. It's not like 3 strikes you're out. You get as many swings at the ball as you want. You get as many. Let me reword that so you truly get it. You get as many swings at the ball as you're willing to take. And what does it take to swing the bat at the ball? It takes a lot of mental courage, So if you're courageous enough to stand in that batter's box, to walk in that arena, and compete, the odds, especially in the federal government contracting industry, that you're ultimately going to have just wild success is pretty damn good. So that's why I love the industry, because you can have all of these failures. All of these failures. Hell, I lost $12 billion in government bids. Nobody remembers that. They only remember the $2 billion that I won. I lost a lot of money as you know when I was bidding as a small business owner. I don't care. I'll say this: my bank account doesn't care that I lost all those. It cares that I won the 350 to $400 million in small business set aside contracts. That's what matters. It's what you win. It's not what you lose. So, if it takes you 10 swings at the ball in order to hit it once, go for it. Who
Yes, sir.
cares about the 10? You just yeah, hopefully you get your number of get your swing count down a little bit lower. So that's the reason why I love this industry so much. It has so many advantages.
Oh my gosh. As this was starting up, we were just talking about SpaceX and the fast iteration, like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
want to, yeah, yeah. Blow up a bunch of rockets, you'll eventually win, right?
Yeah,
You just
you
got to
know
be
what though?
willing to
That's
eat
it.
it.
You know what? I tell you what, I keep on talking. I'll summarize it this way. Learning the nuts and bolts of being a successful entrepreneur is not the hardest thing, not even close. It's overcoming the emotional, mental
Yes.
barriers that everybody faces. It's like, oh man, I could never do that. That's for the beautiful people. I'm not a beautiful person, or like it's who you know, and I don't know anybody. It's skewed. It's all of these negative things that's keeping you from doing it. And some of those are even positive. Some of them are like we admire people for some of these. Where we're saying like, oh wow, Randy's got it going on, man. He wants to go get another degree before he tries it. He wants to learn more. He needs to get a couple more professional certifications. He needs to get a couple more things and do a couple more things and learn a couple more things. And yeah, none of that matters. Nobody's ready to launch their first company. Nobody, ever, ever. And you can spend years trying to learn everything that you think you need to know. But this is profound right here. You don't know what you don't know. And the only way you're going to learn it is to get a little bit of mud on your face. And you gotta launch that. One failed company. One failed company will teach you more than a whole decade of trying to prepare for that failure. One failed company. That's all you got to do. And if you assume that you're going to fail on the first one, and I shouldn't say that, that I should word it a little bit differently, but if you acknowledge the fact that if you if you do fail, it's part of the learning process. And think about all the benefits that came from it. So the most important benefit that's going to come from it is it demystifies it. Now it's no longer some big, large, spooky thing. Hey, you launched a company, got a little bit of egg on your face. The only thing that could hurt was your ego. Who cares? Because you learn so much. It's just like, oh well, and instead of going to get that MBA, I'm just going to fail in my company. I'm going to launch a company and fail horribly. So there's a lot of value in just doing it. And I'll share this story with you, Jonathan. I think you've heard it about a half a dozen times, but it was my father-in-law who who just grabbed me by the ankle, kicking and screaming, and dragged me into entrepreneurship because I told him, told my family, it's like, hey, I want to launch a company and I want to do this, I want to do that, but first I got to do this, next I got to do that, and then I got to get these credentials, and then I got to do that, and my father-in-law, he didn't even remember having this conversation, but it was one of those marquee, monumental, events in my life. He says, Randy, he says, you're getting at that age where you gotta stop planning to have success. You just got to do it. Even if you fail, who cares? Just try it. You got the itch, just do it. And win or lose, you'll make a decision to do something next. He says, but you got to do something. You just can't be planning to do something. And he just it was like I got hit right between the eyes. I was like, man, that's pretty crazy. That's profound what he just said. And I did it out of guilt, and a little bit of shame. Like, yeah, man, I'm married to this guy's daughter. And he said, yeah, he had to set me straight. Like, yeah, man, stop talking about it, just do it. And so I did it. I failed miserably because I am not, trust me when I say this, I am not a Hollywood story. So I took my father-in-law's advice. I launched my first company and boom, it failed. You know what though? I would say it failed dramatically, but here's the question, Jonathan. If to say that it crashed and burned would be giving it too much credibility because it didn't do anything because I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to sell it, didn't know how to market it, didn't know how to, I didn't even have my, I didn't even know how to take the first step. But after I figured that out, like, man, I don't know how to do X, I don't know how to do Y, I don't know how to do Z. So now I had a to-do list. I had to learn X, Y, and Z. And once I learned how to do those things, then I relaunched again. And that time I had some success. I actually had a 3-year company. My company lasted for 3 years, but I couldn't scale it. And then it eventually just boom, it went out of business. So then I got smart. I knew enough to how to launch it, and get it going and make a few bucks. But I didn't know how to really, really, really do it. And at that point, I said, I got to get a little bit of structure and discipline. So I used a business framework. And something that I'd used in the past for complex projects. It's called the Daddy framework. And it started out as something else. I just bastardized it to the point where now it kind of works for like entrepreneurship really well. And that's what I teach in, government contracting academy, is how to follow this process, because it's an iterative process. It expects you to fail, and you learn from that and you pivot and you do something different, and then you get better and better and better. So after my second launch and 3 years of success, boom, it went out of business, and I relaunched the third time using a business framework, and that framework changed everything. So I relaunched it in 2010, and I sold it for 8 figures in 2016. So it changed everything, by following that structured framework. Because when you're launching a business, especially when you're the founder, man, it's a pretty lonely job. You don't have too many people to go talk to. So you need to have a process, you need to have a framework, you need to have something that's in your corner that's going to help you think through things. And that really helped it. So I launched my company in 2010. I relaunched my company in 2010, and I had some success, and then I learned a couple other things, and then I started having really big success. I launched a few other companies during that time frame as well, and they were having success, and because we were using that same approach. And 2016, I sold my first company. In 2019 and 2020, I sold my second and third companies. And 2020, now I'm finally getting around to answer a question from 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago. 2020, I'm retired. And I'm thinking, like, and everybody thinks about retirement, like, wow, you get to do whatever you want. Well, you get to do whatever you want when you're an empty nester, and you don't have kids in middle school and high school. So I became a soccer dad. And that was great. I really loved that because I got to spend a lot more time with my children. But what happened is I kind of I didn't adjust well to it, because I went from having hair on the fire excitement every single day to, what's my big event for the day? Oh, I got to commute to school twice. Okay, ooh, that's my big Tuesday, or my big Thursday. It's like, ugh, and I didn't adjust to it well. So in 2020, I thought, like, okay, let's just launch another company. And I thought, well, geez, I've already done this, a few times. And by that point, probably maybe 5 or 6 times. And I thought, like, do I really want to do that again? That's kind of like being, or do I want to do something different outside the industry, or do I want to, and I ultimately decided on doing this, do something that gives back to the community, give back to the industry. And I decided ultimately to do that for a few reasons. The first reason, the biggest one, is my children, I have 4 sons. My sons had only seen me make money, and they never saw me in uniform when I was on active duty in the Navy. They were born after that. They I was just so busy, leading a company, doing X, doing Y. I was, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I gave a lot of people, a lot of families, opportunities and a way to provide for themselves and all that stuff. So I'm not saying it's negative. It's not negative at all. But I also wanted them to know that if you are successful, then you also have the responsibility to give back. And
Sure.
I told my kids, never be ashamed that you have blessings that other people may or may not have. Be ashamed if you don't share them. That's, that's a bad thing. So I launched Government Contracting Academy, and so, to give back. So what I do is I volunteer my time. It's a social impact company. I have to generate revenue just to keep the lights on, and whenever I'm no longer able to do this, I can't ask the next person who replaces me, or the team that replaces my team, to say, hey, you got to do this for free, and you can only eat ramen 3 times a day. It's got to be a viable company, in order to be able to provide long lasting success and support to the people who really need it, aspiring entrepreneurs in the GovCon industry. So that's why I charge a fee, but it's minute. So that's the, getting back to does government contracting academy cost money? However, what we're doing here is totally free for any and everybody, and
If you don't mind me jumping in on that point, a question from a moment ago. Would you agree that the average person, our audience here, the average person is thinking they need more before they take that leap and go start a business? The average person sits in well, now I'm just going to describe it as a statement. The
Mhm.
average person sits in that purgatory of indecision saying, I don't have enough. And I forget how you mentioned it. Like I need an MBA or
Yeah,
I need more.
you'll never have enough knowledge, but
Yep.
I will say this though, you need a to-do list. What people do, this is the biggest mistake that I see most aspiring entrepreneurs do. They think that somehow or another downloading a 100-page business plan template is somehow or another going to empower them to launch a company. That's 100, and they're all the same. There's somewhere about, page 75, there's the hockey stick, chart that shows that how you're going to
Billionaire.
sell to 1% of everybody in China and become a billionaire within 3 years. They're all the same and they're all useless. And they're useless for a few reasons. One is there's no action items. Okay, I got this great business plan. Well, a plan is a plan of action. Like what do you have to do to be successful? And most of the time that's lacking from the business plan, or it's glossed over at such a high level. It's just like saying, okay, what should I sell? That's a big question. What kind of company are you going to launch? Most companies fail because they're launching into the wrong markets. They're selling the wrong thing to the wrong people. And that's a very common thing. So again, that's one of the advantages that federal government contracting has. You don't have to guess. Most entrepreneurs
Oh,
fail because they guess poorly. And I'll give you the best example in the world. Um, you know, I'm overweight and I'm trying to cut back. Retirement did not work well for me. Like I said, I went from the year before, I retired running a half marathon to retiring, and now I got a few pounds to shed, and I'm still shedding them, after after that. So, um, if you were to ask somebody like me, say, "Hey, Randy, what do you think about me launching a health food company?" I would be guilted. I'd be too ashamed to say, like, man, nobody's going to buy that. I wouldn't. I'm fat and I'm not going to buy that health food. I'm going to say, no, that's a great idea. That's the problem. That's the reason why I'm overweight. I had no good, healthy, lunchtime options. Like, that's a great idea. So, you survey a whole bunch of people and they all say, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And you think, well, the obesity pandemic or what the global pandemic of obesity in the world. And you start to think about how there's all this, fast food marketing and sugary sweets marketing and computer games. Oh my gosh, and the sedentary lifestyle. Yeah, we need to give people, healthy lunchtime, food options. And um, it makes total sense. We all know we need it, or, at least I need it, and those like me need it. So you said, well, where's the downside? We surveyed people and it was a resounding success. Yeah, they love the idea. So then what you do is you launch, that Too Few Tofu restaurants chain, and you're just waiting to see all these people walking in and to your restaurant, and then all of a sudden you see these people walking to the burger and bar grill right across the street. And they're like, those damn liars. Those customers said that they wanted it, but they really didn't. So you put your whole life savings into a restaurant that's that nobody wants because nobody wants to eat tofu. So then you change your restaurant to Big Boy Burritos, the biggest burritos in town, and now you're staying afloat and you're making money. So most entrepreneurs fail because they guess wrong. The good thing about the government contracting industry, you don't have to guess. What the government lists what they're going to buy in the federal budget. It's a law. and they plan that stuff out 7 years in advance, and then you can track it in. So you know exactly what's going to be bought, not only this year, but then, then the next several years, at least, over a half a decade, from now, you know what they're buying. And then what they do is they say, okay, this is in the budget to be bought by this agency. And then they release a request for proposals where they provide in minute detail exactly what it is that they want. And then the game becomes pin the tail on the donkey. They're providing you the picture of a donkey's ass. And they're saying, we need a tail, and that tail needs to go right there. So if you take your tail, your proposal, and you write that proposal and you put it closest to where that tail belongs, you're going to win the contract. So there is no guessing in federal government contracting. You know exactly what it is that they want, you know exactly how they want it, and all you got to do is write a proposal that gives them exactly what they want. That's it. It's unbelievable.
On a higher level, we are not directly selling anything in this webinar. We have stuff to sell, but this webinar is a transfer of knowledge, right? Like in general, this conversation and then the weekly meetings going forward, it's the general knowledge. What Randy just expressed matches some of what I was promoting there. It's kind of administrative. Would you agree the number one reason the government is struggling to find enough subcontractors is companies aren't doing that paperwork, or the barrier to entry is a willingness to do I picture it as administrative. It's not like strength or
Well, yeah, you're right. It's unique. The government in their, and I'm probably the world's biggest federal government critic. I really am. But I'm also the one of the better benefactors of it.
Yes, sir.
But the deal is in its goal to provide the fairest procurement opportunities and the best opportunities for everybody, to include especially small businesses. They end up creating an element of bureaucracy, and you got to know how to play the game, because it is different. It's not like it's not like, hey, you have an itch and I got a scratch. Hey, we're a perfect pair. It's not like that. The government's got an itch and you got a great scratch, but there's that whole procurement process that you got to go through in order for that scratch to be applied to the itch. So there is, you got to learn that that navigational process. But here's the deal. You're right. 95% of U.S. companies choose not to pursue federal government contracting opportunities. 95%. So 95% of your natural competitors that would compete with you on other things won't compete against you if you're pursuing the federal government. Work with them. It's just unbelievable. 95%, less than 5%. So if you want to eliminate your natural competitive field to something 95% less, federal government contracting is the way to go. Now, you mentioned something about why we're doing this. You really sold this to me, doing this webinar, when you said this. Randy, because we've been talking for years, and that this has been an ongoing struggle for our country. Fewer and fewer government contractors exist. Now, I want you to think about that. Fewer bids, number of bids are made for each procurement. And that is not good for our country. And somehow there has been this negative stigma about federal government contracting, about how it's dirty or dishonest or ugly. And that is not the case at all. And I know how and why that happened, but but the reality of it is much of our national strength is wrapped around our industrial base.
Yes, sir.
And I shared this. Oh, I got this one picture. I love this picture because, and I'm a veteran, so I am not taking anything away from from the people who served during World War II. The men and women who served in the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Air Force, Coast Guard. Well, Air Force was Army Air Corps at the time. But I want people to understand this. At the start of the war, there was about 300 U.S. Navy ships, and a whole bunch of them were damaged during Pearl Harbor, at least some of the, the nicer ones. So by the end of World War II, I wish I had a better copy of this picture, because this right here is basically a line of aircraft carriers. We had hundreds of aircraft carriers. Now think about what I just said. Hundreds of aircraft carriers. Hundreds. In fact, we had a 2-to-1 advantage over the entire world with our Navy by the end of World War II. Now, here's a little fact that nobody kind of, understands. The United States Navy built 0 ships during World War II. They were built, by people like Rosie the Riveter, who was building all of our aircrafts, all of our airplanes. It was our industrial base.
Yes, sir.
Government contractors that did all this wonderful and great stuff. Put a man on the moon, everybody thinks it was NASA. NASA never built a single rocket. It was government contractors. It was companies who were responding to a government contract to do that. And somehow, again, I don't understand what happened, because in I think it was in 1962 that Kennedy gave his famous inauguration speech, ask not what you can do for your country, or no, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I'm sure I bastardized that, so I paraphrased it. So, but somehow or another, we went from that kind of mindset to thinking like, oh my goodness, what can we do for our country? To now is, if you try to support your country in any way, it's a negative in any way. Now, again, some of our politicians have kind of jaded everybody. Like, if you're in public service, or if you're supporting the government in any way, then you must fall in the same category as those. And there's stories about $600 toilet seats, and I get all that. And I'm not saying that there's not bad apples in the government contracting industry. There certainly are. However, when you start talking about that $600, hammer, and the $2,000 toilet seat and all this kind of stuff, usually there's a story behind that never makes it to the press. It's just like that toilet seat that costs so much money. Well, it actually had to be stress tested because it was on an aircraft, and it had to be tested to be able to have somebody sitting on it, and then all of a sudden pull 5 Gs and then not shear off and go into, some equipment. So, now it had to be tested, and that's why it cost so much. Now, it just so happens to end up that a regular on the shelf toilet seat could do whatever it needed to be done, but they weren't sure about that. It had to be tested. And it's all this. That never makes the news. It's those shocking headlines is what people remember. But government contracting is not a negative; it's a positive. You're supporting your country.
Yes,
And I'll go this far. I served 10 years on active duty, Jonathan. 10 years on active duty, and then 6 years in the reserves. Whatever, and I was at, I was a, my last couple assignments, I was a chief engineer on a Navy ship. So I was Scotty on a warship, think of it that way. And I was keeping it going through the water, making sure that all the equipment worked, that we could, all the electricity and all the systems worked so we could fight the ship. And I never did anything nearly as important to our national security than what I did as the CEO of a small business government contractor. Now, a lot of this stuff I can't talk about because they're classified contracts, but I can tell you that what my company did was tremendously more impactful than what I was doing in uniform. Now, I got a big pat on the back. Hey, you're a veteran. Good job, Randy. Good job. But do I ever get a pat on the back for being the CEO of a government contracting company? No, I don't. In fact, some people, I'm a beltway bandit. Hey, you're fleecing the government. We were actually doing some pretty exciting stuff there. And, but nobody ever pats you on the back, for or how about this, giving people jobs. My first company, 40% of my workforce, and we had hundreds of employees, were disabled veterans. 40%. I made it, a focused point that we would give those people, if they were close, we were going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And it worked out like a champ. Those people continue to serve even out of uniform. So, but that's why I'm doing, that's why I agreed to what you agreed, is because this can no longer be perceived. This industry can no longer be perceived as an ugly word, as a dirty industry. This has got to be, it's not like we've privatized, prisons. And I'm not criticizing that either. I don't know anything about that, but and one might be able to say like, maybe that's not fully a great thing, but there's no downside, so to support the your country, as a company. And you're not fleecing them. Do you make money? Yeah, you make money. The government wants you to make money, because if you weren't making money, would you continue to do it? And the answer to that is no. Everybody gets mad, like, oh, profit, you're charging the government profit. Absolutely. Profit is a slip variable. What happens if you negotiate a contract rate and, like, something happens like we had a couple of years ago, where next thing you know, we have 8% inflation and you only got 5% profit. Well, now you're paying the government 3% of the cost of that contract for the privilege to do work for them. Like, nobody can do that. You just can't stay in business and do that. So, but profit is not bad. Profit is good.
I teased a run for state representative here in Minnesota, and I winged a speech in front of a bunch of veterans. And one of the key points, the part that stayed with me, the probability of war is going up. And the probability of us being able to produce enough materials to maintain that war is going down. And there's a delta between these two things, right? Like just the way the world is working, right? And you bring up World War II. There's a lot of things going on.
Oh,
In my mind, the probability is going up in our defense base. What we're talking about, why we're talking about this is it's going down or stagnation. Feel free to correct me on this, but that's kind of how I picture it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm getting goosebumps as we talk. Build
yeah,
it
it's so
up.
true.
Time is now.
I totally agree with what you just said. If we don't start turning the corner, and here's the
Yes, sir.
deal, and I think a lot of it is because the government does a really horrible job supporting small businesses. There's a program called PTAC, and I forget what it stands for. And I used it just like everybody else does. It's a free government program where, but it's not really helpful. It really isn't. The government, they do their best, but so they actually hire government contractors, but they're not the entrepreneurs. They're the people who are, people who are hired by these entrepreneurs to go in there and help, aspiring entrepreneurs launch successful businesses. Now, you got this very junior, government contractor who's making $40,000 a year, and he is trying to mentor an aspiring entrepreneur on how to launch a company that will make him be worth, tens of millions of dollars. It's like, if the $40,000 a year guy knew how to do it, he wouldn't be working for $40,000 a year. He'd be doing it. So it's just like academia. It's like, if you can't do, you teach. If you can't teach, you inspect. You know, so it's that kind of deal. And the government, like I said, the government doesn't do a really good job at that, at promoting it. But there's so many different opportunities, and that's not to say that the government doesn't kind of cook their own books. Also, there's a lot of success, in the small business world for for small businesses. But it's kind of funny that the government really has a difficult time meeting all their goals, but they always give themselves an A plus on their small business utilization goals. I'm thinking, like, how in the hell did you give yourself an A plus when you're not even meeting half your goals? Half the agencies did not meet all their small business set aside goals, and you're getting that. Man, I think my GPA would be a little bit higher, in college, had I been able to grade my own papers. Yeah. Give my if I graded myself, I would probably be doing a little bit better.
That was a good
So,
one.
but yeah, that's the real motivator for me, is to say we got to change a few things. We got to change the perception, because yeah, something's going to have to change. It really is, because what, I'll give you an example too about small businesses. Um, 2015. This is how good small businesses can work. And the government does a lot of things. So in 2015, the I was in a mentor protege program. My company was, and my mentor was Hewlett Packard, and I was learning, not that much directly from them, but from the mentor protege program as a whole. And I also knew I had a safety net a little bit, but not much. So in 2015, a company that I owned, co-owned, actually it was a joint venture company that I co-owned, was awarded a contract to completely redo the Navy's manpower readiness enterprise. Now, this enterprise was supposed to um, ensure that every sailor, both on active duty and reserves, because they weren't even thinking about reservists, and reservists, as we know, post 9/11, they are a very significant part of our fighting force, our deployable
Yes, sir.
force now.
Yes,
And
sir.
they weren't even being tracked. So they were going to redo the active duty side while they were going to incorporate the reservists into that. Now, that was in 2015. In the 1990s, there were probably about 5 companies that the government would have awarded that contract to. 5. And one of them would have been IBM. You know what I mean? We're talking about that caliber of company, only 5. In 2015, with all the small business initiatives, the mentor protege programs, um, support getting things like ISO 9001 quality management system, certification, CMMI capability maturity model, level 3 appraisal for services and development. With all of the support to get those types of credentials and training, it was awarded to a small business. And now I know how much I charged the government, and it was probably less than half of what IBM would have, and we delivered. And that is the value of the small business component of the federal government contracting, industry is we can do it cheaper in almost every single case than these large, and they're almost monopolistic. They really are. Some of these larger companies, like, hey, if you want an aircraft built, there's only just a handful of companies who can actually build an aircraft. Now, if you wanted to have a large, agency enterprise system built, well, now there's a hell of a lot more than just 5 companies because the government has very purposefully planted small businesses, you know, programs to grow them up so they can do those more complex things.
Which speaks to the set asides you mentioned just a moment ago, also, right? Because that's part of the opportunity. That's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, I we talk about, why, I'd say I would like to talk a little bit more about why the federal government contracting industry is kind of hurting a little bit, because I think
yes,
if you
sir. Yes,
understand
sir.
why, I think what you can do is you can peel that onion, and you because people they've experienced, decades of this, a lifetime of of why other industries are better than this one. I've got my son recently graduated from UC Berkeley. Hey, Silicon Valley. Woohoo, everybody's excited about Silicon Valley. The probability of success in Silicon Valley is actually lower, way lower than that of federal government contracting. You know what I mean? It's like, but yet, he's a Berkeley comp sci grad. It's like, why is he going to go and be a federal government contractor? Well, because his probability of success is skyrockets by doing that, rather than trying to guess what innovation the customer is willing to buy. So I think if you do that, again, one, government contractors used to be heroes. We used to put them, the
Yes, sir.
company Grumman put a man on the moon. They didn't take credit for it, NASA did, but you know who really did it. World War II. Ford was cranking out bombers literally on the hour. We could have, wow, yeah, we could have eclipsed the sky, with the number of our bomber production capabilities. It's mind-boggling what we could have done, and it wasn't the Army who was doing this. It was companies like Ford, and they had shifted to a war footing, and Ford went to war, and that's how they did that.
I think the
Uh,
average person is not aware that's actually how it works. And I know when I started GCA, when you and I first started speaking, I did not comprehend the totality, if that's the appropriate word, of this. Like the government buys stuff. The government doesn't do stuff, right? The government's, yeah.
Yeah, the government, if the government is doing something, I think we're all gonna, be end up living in caves. Yeah, because they're not, they're not built to do that, in my opinion. They're built to outsource things, and they do a really good job at outsourcing. Sometimes they get it wrong, but not often. But but there's a lot more federal government contracting success out there than most people realize. Like right now, I tell
Yes,
people
sir.
this. If you go to, there's not too many of them out there, but if if you have one near your house and you're lucky, a Barnes and Noble. You go to a Barnes and Noble bookstore and you go to the business section. You've got row after row after row of business books and leadership books written by celebrity CEO, self-help gurus, and now the big thing is special operators, Navy SEALs, green eyed
Chekhov.
snake eater books, where they're translating, how doing a snatch and grab mission is, translatable to managing profit and loss. Now, that's a stretch. Well, the other two are stretches too, but no, I guess what I'm trying to say is nobody's going to buy a book from a deca millionaire who is who launched a government contracting company from their basement and grew it to to hundreds of millions of dollars of value. Or nobody's going to, that's kind of not very sexy, especially when you got books by and about Elon Musk and the Apple founder and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and all these gurus out there. um, it's just not gonna, you can't compete. Nobody's gonna buy that kind of book. And the reason why is because people who buy business books and self-help books, they don't want to know the truth. They want the easy lie. I call it daydream, I call it daydream heroin. They want to say like, hey, I understand my why. I'm this close to being able to be a gazillionaire because I understand my why. Or how about this? Follow your passion. There's no work in following your passion because that's called a hobby. You know what I mean? Like, hey, have a hobby and become a gazillionaire. It's like everybody wants to believe that. It's just like people like me who, wants to lose a few pounds. We don't want to be told to get off our lazy ass and go jogging. We want to be told that you drink this milkshake 3 times a day and you're going to lose 30 pounds.
True
Like,
that.
who the hell wouldn't choose the milkshake over running? You know what I mean? It's like, but that's what it is. So we're selling, we're selling lose weight milkshakes, that all you gotta do is just drink these milkshakes. Wow, that's great. They're great tasting, delicious. No exercise, don't adjust how you're eating, just drink the milkshakes. It's like, yeah, everybody wants to believe that, and everybody will buy it, and they'll end up gaining weight. Nobody wants to be told the hard truth. And so they want to be told the little simple, easy tricks, like, oh, these little tricks, oh, write down everything you want to do the night before, or, whatever the self-help things are. And I'm not trying to discourage people from doing it. You should do that. You should read any and every single thing that you think can add even the slightest bit of benefit to your life. But, nobody hears about government contractors. Nobody does. Like I like showing the picture of this table right here. Who's the millionaire? Who's the multimillionaire, government contracting owner? And nobody knows. Why? Because government contract, CEOs, and company owners, they don't have a car or limo service taking them to the corporate office in Manhattan where they're taking their private elevator up to their penthouse office. That nobody knows. Wall Street Journal's not, interviewing these people on a daily basis. Instead, these people, they're embedded in some no-name nested government organization that nobody's ever even heard of, and getting the job done with their employees, getting with their team leads, working hand in hand with the government to get the mission done. And they're usually they're indistinguishable from everybody else, but yet their paycheck's a little bit different. They're making real money doing that. The other thing
Spe-
is, go
Oh,
ahead.
speaking on that spot, you were just mentioning the self-help or the allure of
Yeah.
a quick, easy fix. That is not what we're talking about here. That is not for me, from my perspective, that is not our conversations. In government contracting, it's administrative, and that's just my understanding. That's how I picture it. It's administrative. Like if you're willing to do the busy work, if you're willing to get rejected a bunch of times over, you're gonna win. It's just a matter of staying in the game,
It's a
right?
numbers game. It really
And
is.
yep,
And,
it's not. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you're right. And I just looked at the time, so I do want to cover one
Oh, yes,
last,
sir. Yes, sir.
but here's the deal though. So again, there's let's just finish this up and put a bow on it
I
about
like it.
why there's government contracting. If we're doing this every single week, we should probably give this a solid foundation of, if you understand why it's not a big, why people aren't marketing it, then you understand that all these myths are very easily debunked.
Should we do it
So,
every week? You just touched on it. I'm
well,
okay to make
we can
that
do it
call.
weekly. Yeah, well, we can do it weekly. I'm
Done.
good with
Done.
weekly. I'm
Okay.
good
I'll
with,
set it up. Yep.
So the other thing is there's no schools out there that teach this. It's like if you want to get in finance, you go to Wharton, hands down. If you wanted to get in the automotive industry, you go to Chicago Booth. If you want to get into hospitality industry, you go to Cornell. It's there's MBA programs. There's an MBA program that specializes in every industry, with the exception of the federal government contracting one. There's not a single one out there, because I look, believe me, I look. Now, George Mason University, they actually have like a little center where they're starting to talk about, government contracting as a major industry and stuff like that. But they are like decades away from actually offering anything that could be really helpful for somebody. So there's no school out there. The other thing is everybody thinks like, man, why would you ever want to do federal government contract, man? You make no money. Well, I made a few bucks doing that. And the reason why is because the government, they have to have political cover, because they've been beaten up by the 24-hour, 7-day a week, news, cable news networks about how they're fleecing the taxpayer and that they're overspending, and mostly that's true. So they'll never give a contract award to a high profit proposal. So you give them the political cover that you need. So you bid a low profit, but you manage to a higher one. So that's just a common phrase. And you know who promotes this myth right here about, razor thin profits? That's the government, because they want to say, oh, we're good stewards of the taxpayer, dollars. Now, I want you to think about that. Who in the world actually thinks the federal government is a good steward of taxpayer dollars? Not a single damn person. If you think that the government is really doing a great job getting the most out of your tax dollars, you know, I'm not, government contracting is not for you. Walking upright is probably not for you, if you actually believe that. You know what I mean? Because they're horrible at it. They don't care. It's not their money. If it's going to make their life easier, boom, they're going to. But the deal is they're the ones who promulgate that, because it makes them look good. Like, oh, we're really good. We're not going to let those Beltway bandits, not in my agency. Which, yeah, right. So there's a lot of money to be had there. The deal is it low profit margin? Yeah, it's lower profit margin, but it's the volume. The numbers are massive. Numbers are massive in the federal government. They don't spend little dollars, they spend big dollars. So would you rather make, 15% on 100 million, or 40% or 50% on 3 million? It's like there's no comparison there. It's like, would you rather be Bugatti, or would you rather be Toyota? Now, Bugattis, you can sell this for millions, okay? Toyota sells millions of cars. There's a big difference there. Toyota is going to crush Bugatti every single day. So you think of the federal government, contracting industry as the Toyota of the car industry.
Which is a key point. This is something we want our audience to grasp. And I didn't know that
Yeah.
until you and I started talking. Like that is a big deal. And it's a perception thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the other thing is again, that's busted. The other thing is Hollywood. It's rarely you go to any movie theater, and if it's an action thriller, I guarantee there's a 50% chance that it's going to be the industrial complex, this evil government contracting company that's creating dinosaurs as weapons, or weaponizing dinosaurs, and or they've creating this bug that's going to kill everything, this virus or bacteria that's going to eat its way, through everybody's brain and turn people into zombies. But how about this? Every zombie flick that you've ever saw, every apocalyptic one, it has been created by the industrial military complex. every single one. You know what I mean? You know, nothing ever happened from Mom's Bakery from down the street. You know, she creates a muffin that just, you know, like, oh my gosh, that, you know, never mix those two ingredients together. She just created this, you know, it's always defense contractors that are doing something horrible. So, and then a lot of people think like, hey, you know, writing proposal, like I are an engineer and can't write too good. Hey, believe me, I am an engineer and I can't write too good. But the deal is you don't write proposals, you build them. And that's what a lot of people get wrong. They
People.
don't care. You know, I tell people your proposal is scored. It's not read. Of course it's read, but it's not the way your English teacher does it. What they're doing is they have requirements and they're looking for your proposal to see how that requirement is addressed. And there's a certain format, you know, do you address it fully? You know, a lot of people don't even provide a solution. They'll just repeat it back and they'll say, oh, and we'll do that. Like, no, you got to show how you're going to do it, you know. And then if you do that, you got to provide proof points that you know how to do it. You're going to provide the benefits of how you did it. Yeah, all this kind of stuff. It's a formula. So there's this one proposal writing class that I had it, and it wasn't even offered by anybody. It was offered by the company that employed me. Company used to be called American Management System, and they were split and sold, but they had their own little proposal writing class, and it was the only one that was worth a damn. In my 25 years of doing this stuff, it was the only one that was really helpful. What they did is they took the class and they said, okay, you are going to be the source selection board, the government, and you're going to pick between these two proposals for the next generation, you know, fighter jet. And so we had two proposals and we had to make the award. And now I'm dating myself here. You know, one was for like the next generation F-16 and the other one was for the Cessna. Now, the F-16, it had all the information in there, but it wasn't organized well. They didn't provide the value statements of why that was a good thing. And then you had the Cessna, and they were saying things like, hey, runway length can be shortened by 75%, saving all kinds of money on runway and airport maintenance. The cost of maintenance itself for the actual airplane, it was minuscule compared to that one. And it was providing all this information in the formula, the way you want to present it. And we all unanimously selected the Cessna as our nation's next premier fighter jet over the next, the next F-16 variant. And if you know how to if you know how to play the game, you're going to win. You don't have to be a good writer.
Yes, sir.
Now, this one, it was well written. It was just not poorly organized. It was poorly organized, and it didn't have all this stuff, but it was written well. The Cessna one, it was written by a smart fifth grader. You know what I mean? But it had the content where you needed, and it provided proof points and value statements and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm telling you, and you can learn that. Like, one of the things I teach is if you use a framework or a template, you got to demonstrate your understanding. You got to provide your solution. You got to provide proof points, the benefits of it. You got to list your discriminators, your win themes, your source material, and your partner value. This right here, if you do this right here, if you follow this template every single time, hey, this right here, everybody says, hey, Randy, how did you do it? How'd you win? How'd you win all that money? Contract. I did this right here. This is the one thing that I haven't seen any other companies do. And it worked for me like a champ. Is I wasn't smart enough to say, okay, I've got my win themes and I've got an outline. Okay, now let's write a 50-page proposal. I couldn't do that. I had to dumb it down. And by the time you write your bullets out here, understanding, and then your solution, your proof points, at that point, all you're doing is you're just adding an introductory sentence, a couple prepositional phrases, and shortening it a little bit. It's already written. All you got to do is just fill out this template. And
We're in our last, I apologize for interjecting. We're in our last minute here. Would you agree? I'm setting the stage for our next one. Would you agree that this is a spot that we can add America? This is a spot that we can add value. You can add value with what you're talking about now. I think the timing just worked out great, right? Like
I think so too. Because I think this is where we can add value.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? I think this is And there's so much opportunity. If people just knew about the opportunities in federal government contracting and they understood how to do it, um, better, if that information was available to them, we'd be making, I guarantee if we continue to do this, we are going to change people's lives who decided to pursue this. And I think we're also helping the country out. So, for people who are listening, hey, I'm not altruistic, completely. Believe me, we all want to make a buck. And I'm telling you, federal government contracting, I did my analysis way back in 2003, and I really did this because I needed to make some money, and it was government contracting, then real estate investment, and I did both, and I made a hell of a lot more money in government contracting than I did in real estate investment. It is very doable, and once you learn how to do it, man, it's a numbers game, and the numbers are like 1 in 7 odds. That was my odds of winning my very first $15 million prime contract that made me a multimillionaire. So I made my first 5 million that way. I had over a 30% profit margin, and had a 1 in 7 probability. There were 6 other bidders. Six. I had a 1 in 7 chance.
That's
Putting $5 million. Well, that was pre-tax, but putting that amount of money in my portfolio.
that's
So very easy to
I
do it.
we're at the end of the time here, and that's
Yeah.
a good one. 1 in 6 odds, right? 1 in 6 odds. You go up to bat six
Yeah, well,
times,
one
you're
in
gonna hit.
seven. There were 6 other bidders, so it was 1 in 7. Yeah. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
1 in 7 odds. Yeah, it's unbelievable. The odds.
That's
So
what we're gonna help out. There's a bit of coaching here
yeah.
on top of that. Yep.
Yeah, so this is the
We're
community
at,
right here. I think, and the deal is if we collaborate, I think it really helps people out. So,
makes all the difference in
um,
the world.
okay, yeah. Hey, there's more information. This is not a sales pitch or anything like that, but if you go to gcacampus.com, I got videos up there.
Yes, sir.
There's videos at GovCon Academy on YouTube. These are my email addresses. If you want to, like I said, I'm just trying to help people. Here's a
Yes, sir.
Calendly invite if you want to schedule some time with me. So, like I said, this is not a hard sell. I've made my money. I'm trying to do something different now. So
Randy's strategy and Alex Hormozi's strategies are similar, right? Like it's
yeah, well, man, I think he's a man.
oh my gosh.
Jonathan and I both agree on that, man. That guy he's got it going on. Oh yeah, and here's the book. I put a lot of the stuff, in this book right here. I used launching a government contracting company as a case study, just to show you that you truly are good enough to launch your own company, and I talk about that framework. So, and I'm selling it for as cheap as Amazon will allow me to do it. Amazon forces me to charge 99 cents for the Kindle, and they force me to charge, I think, $6.99 for, that's their cost, per book. So this is, so I'm not trying to fleece anybody here, but I think there's a ton of information in this book that could help you get started in the world of government contracting.
Yes, sir. My wife loves it. We got it. We got it. We get to end it here. Oh my gosh. On my side, I will figure out the weekly schedule and I will send it out to the audience. I will broadcast it on my side. Oh my gosh, this was awesome. What a
No,
cool opportunity.
Jonathan, I really loved your idea to do this. I
Yes,
really
sir.
did because having creating a community, we should, if you create a community when people come and they learn and they share information and stuff like that, then that's the only way that things get fixed. That's the way things improve. That's the only way you can actually learn and take advantage of other people's hard-earned lessons, in my opinion, is kind of have that collaboration. So I've been fortunate enough to have a few mentors that really help me out. So
You're fine.
yeah, and you're
So
one of them, buddy. I tell you, I've learned a ton from you, especially with the personal branding and the marketing thing. Um, I know we're over, but I still got to share this story. I had just sold my third company, and I thought, like, well, it's 2020. I'm just going to kick back, retire, and see what opportunities are going to come my way. And I guess I just assumed, like, hey, I rapidly grew these companies, and we were all over the federal government and sexy organizations like the Intel community, DHS, the healthcare. We were in all the places you'd want to be, and I just assumed that I'd be asked to lead a few companies, larger companies, publicly owned companies, that kind of stuff. And the deal is I never considered, and well, I very consciously had a very low profile on the internet. And the reason why is because I had polygraph clearances. My companies did things in, the defense and the intelligence industry where you just don't want to have that, put yourself out
Yes,
there.
sir.
So I walked away from my business career, and all of the successes, all of the credibility, all of the reputation stayed with the companies I left. None of it rubbed off on me. None of it. I had zero personal equity. You know, I was, nothing. In fact, this is how bad it was. And I am not joking when I say this. I joke about it, but this is 100% true. When you Googled my name in 2020, I had a distant relative with the same name, Randy Wimmer, who died in the 1980s, and his obituary had a higher SEO score than anything about me. A dead guy who died, 40 years ago, ranked higher on SEO, had more of a personal brand than I did. Now, that is terrifying. And so Jonathan was really insightful. There's some of the things that he had, encouraged me to do were really helpful. Even to, like I said, leading to publication of an Amazon best-selling book, creating, government contracting community around GCA. And, and now I'm interviewing, now I have a lot of opportunities. And honestly, it's personal branding that really helped me out there, because otherwise I would have just faded away into oblivion. And
Yes, sir.
any and every single thing that I had accomplished in the federal government contracting industry, stayed with my companies. It didn't come with me. And that's terrifying, that you can invest literally so much time of your life towards something. And people who are transitioning military is the same way, just as bad. All their just accomplishments, their training, all the reputation, credibility stays in uniform when they leave it. And so it's important. You have to have that. And you can't be a leader until you have followers. You can't be a thought leader until people listen and understand what you have to say. So you have to put yourself out there a little bit, and you have to be willing to share and work with people. And so you have to do those things. So I really appreciate you helping me out with that there, Jonathan. So
Which is part of the origin to this, right?
yeah, otherwise, yeah, this wouldn't be happening.
We're in it to win it.
Our relationship. So that's
Oh my
all I
gosh.
have there, Jonathan. I guess we'll be talking again, in a week from now? Or
Spoiler,
whatever.
we tend to go over. It's a thing. Good conversation. Let it ride.
Think of it as extra value.
Yeah, awesome. Oh my gosh. I'm going to end it. I'm going to end it. This was awesome. I appreciate everybody that tuned in, and we're going to post the recording, so others will be able to tune in. I will figure out the weekly schedule, recurring schedule on my side, and then I will broadcast it. I'll let everybody know, disseminate that across planet Earth. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
Awesome.
Jonathan. So, okay.
But you're awesome, Randy. Much appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, you are there, bud. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Okay, bye.